I got a patron request from Sonia to review the Disney animated movie Bolt. This is a film that's been overshadowed by the Walt Disney Animation productions that followed it, and I don't see it discussed much these days. However, I've always had a fondness for it, and most importantly, I consider it the beginning of Disney Animation's hot streak that lasted for several years. Before the release of Bolt, the studio was having a bit of a rough patch, and then this movie came along and showed that spark was returning. Story-wise, Bolt does not rewrite the talking animal rulebook. It follows a familiar road trip structure, but nonetheless does a lot of neat things. The notion of Bolt being the star of this big action show, the director making him think he actually has superpowers, is an inspired one. Although if you stop and think about it, the logistics of pulling off a show like this are preposterous. Making a whole television show with these big elaborate action sequences and only filming them once is something that would never happen, not to mention animal welfare groups will be all over the production. But this adds to the whole absurdity of the director doing all of this for realism. Realism in a show where a dog has superpowers and can take out entire armies with a single bark. The opening action sequence also starts the movie on a high note, with the directors Byron Howard and Chris Williams treating it as if it were a real action show with stunts and stakes. When Bolt ends up lost on the other side of the country, there is a lot of humor out of him thinking he's a real superdog, although also an element of sadness as we see that the show director is taking away his natural dog-like instincts entirely for the purposes of entertainment. That's quite a biting commentary underneath the fun dog antics. John Travolta does a good job voicing Bolt. Now seriously, he takes everything, although I think the scene stealer of the movie is Susie Essman as Middens the cat. She has the right sarcastic responses to Bolt's behavior, while also bringing plenty of understanding for his entire ordeal. There's also Rhino the hamster, who is a literal ball of energy, with Mark Walton depicting his excitement in meeting his television hero. The three of them form a solid dynamic during their journey together, with the film successfully showing their growing bond. Miley Cyrus was cast as the voice of Bolt's owner, Penny, and while it was possibly a bit of stunt casting on Disney's part, I thought she did a good job in the role. She nicely depicts her worries about Bolt both before and after he goes missing, and does quite well in the dramatic scenes. A lot of the time, I don't even think about the fact that Cyrus is voicing the character. Although, fun fact, the original voice of Penny was Chloe Grace Moretz, with her even recording a majority of the dialogue. However, the character was then aged up, and she was replaced by Cyrus. She does still voice the younger Penny in the first scene, though. Among the other characters Bolt meets on his trip, ones that stand out to me are some pigeons. A clever touch is that all the pigeons act specifically to their region. The first ones he encounters in New York act very similarly to the good feathers from Animaniacs, with one of them even named Bobby, so I have a feeling this was a deliberate homage. I especially love the gag of the Hollywood pigeons being aspiring screenwriters whose encounter with Bolt turns into a pitch meeting. The attempts at heart also work well. The most heartbreaking moment of the movie is when Middens goes into her backstory, with Essman capturing all those emotions as we learn what led to her becoming an alley cat. Regarding the music, the Miley Cyrus song that plays over the end credits got most of the attention during the movie's release, but I find it to be a pretty generic rock song. The song in Bolt that I've always been a fan of is Barking at the Moon by Jenny Lewis. It plays during a montage of Bolt, Middens, and Rhino traveling across the country and is a delightful tune. There's an upbeat quality to it with the filmmakers perfectly fitting it with the images, and it's one I've often gone back to. It's a wonderful song. Something I should probably bring up about Bolt is that the film originally started development as a Chris Sanders film titled American Dog. The basic premise was about the same, as it also centered on a dog television star who believes his show is real and then finds himself far away from Hollywood and tries to return back home. When John Lasseter was made head of Disney Animation, he felt the movie was not working, and Sanders ultimately left Disney due to creative differences on the project, which eventually morphed into Bolt. Some animation tests and concept art have made their way online over the years, and I've long been curious to see how American Dog would have turned out, especially since I have a fondness for Chris Sanders' work. Even though the film did change, I don't understand why Sanders did not get at least a story credit or some acknowledgement in the credits. It may have departed heavily from his original vision, but he still came up with a basic concept. With that said, I don't think the difficult production should take away from what an entertaining and delightful film Bolt is, and it was exactly the movie Disney Animation needed to release at that time. If you've seen Bolt, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for the request, Sonia.